This is a fellow who in the United States Senate participated in blocking protections for IVF. This is an individual who has said he is for a national and has made every indication that he is for a national abortion ban. And so, again, this is where the power is with the people. We have an election coming up.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris reacting to J.D. Vance, the Ohio Republican senator, being added to Donald Trump's presidential ticket as the running mate. I want to bring in Missouri Democratic Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, who joins me from Kansas City, Missouri, one of my favorite places in America, as a proud graduate of the University of Missouri. Congressman, it is great to see you. Sir, there's been some pretty heavyweight news in Democratic circles today. First, Adam Schiff, a colleague of yours running for the United States Senate in California, currently a congressman representing district in California, today called on President Biden to step aside. Your reaction?
Well, I have an enormous amount of respect for Representative Schiff. I'm, in fact, one of his big fans, and I've actually said that to him, as is members of my family. But I think I've said it many, many times, and it is a truth that cannot be pushed out of the way, and that is that unless Joe Biden decides himself that he's not going to run, all of the major figures in the Democratic Party can ask him to leave. And if he doesn't want to leave, there's no way to get him out. He is the delegate. He is a presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party for the November election. That's the way it stands right now. And if we keep hanging out here in the forest of indecisiveness, we're going to make sure we lose. I think I'm very much concerned. Look, not to decide is, at least in this case, a decision. And so we're hanging up here. We got to make a decision. We got to make a decision. We don't. If we don't make, and I think if something is going to happen, it has to happen within the next week. If not, I think the decision is already made.
In light of that, decisions already made, observation from you, Congressman Cleaver, and I take every point you just made. He is the presumptive nominee. He has all the delegates, twice as many delegates as he needs. There is no mechanism absent President Biden deciding to step down to, in a very short order, dislodge him from that path to nominee status. And yet, as Democrats often say, the voice of the people matters. And there's an Associated Press poll that today says 65% of adults surveyed who describe themselves as Democrats say they would prefer President Biden not be the nominee. What does that tell you?
It tells me that we have a lot of work to do. I'm hopefully not wallowing in some kind of field of hiding from the truth. We've got a lot of work to do. The president has a lot of work to do, and we have a short time to get it done. But things can change overnight. Anything can happen. The president may end up getting involved in a 200-yard sprint and win, and win the election. But I do think that I understand when a person allows a goal to die, a part of their somebodyness dies. And I think Joe Biden's goal is to win a second term. And I have not seen anything that would suggest that he's moving in that direction. I was one of the first people out on the point for now President Joe Biden. Former secretaries, and a lot of members from Congress were slipping and sliding down the streets of Iowa, not getting very many people in any crowd. And John Kerry and I were on that bus. And one of the biggest rallies we got was at a church in Cedar Rapids. I think we got 22 people. But a few months later, Joe Biden was fighting it out for the election, winning the election. So I'm not ready to just say it's automatic. We're automatically going to lose. I am realistic enough to say that it does not look good. I'm not I'm not going to pretend that everything is great. It is not. And since you're from my home state, I've got to be straight with you.
Understood. Based on what you've seen in the first 2 days of this Republican convention, do you find issues or points of contrast that can or should be a springboard for President Biden?
Oh my goodness, yes. I think uh, all of the talk that is going on about the news media lying on President Trump. I keep hoping somebody will say to people who make that comment that or issue that statement to start naming the things that the media lied about. I'm at a loss, and I think probably millions of Americans would love to know what the media is lying about, and because that could change people's mind, and Trump's numbers may go up if they say, well, he never said that that people coming across the border were vermin. They could say they could really put a great campaign together saying that the news media is in cahoots with the Democrats, and those of us who've been around know that the news media, unfortunately for us, sometimes is not in anybody's pocket, and that's just one of the things. I mean, those 28 lies are still 28 lies, and calling it the truth is not going to change the fact that it is still a lie.
And Congressman Cleaver, right before I let you go, I would say if you would be so kind to let me summarize your comments to us today to fellow Democrats: stop pushing the panic button. It's not working. Is that a fair summary?
That's almost a direct quote.
Because there's no panic button big enough to deal with this situation. And the more panic that you convey as a party to the public, the worse it's going to turn out, if I hear you correctly.
Yes, we're out beating up on a person who is going to be our nominee. And I think the Republicans have exercised a tremendous amount of discipline. They have just allowed Democrats to go out and slap their candidate around, and they'll just wait until after the Democratic convention and then use all the things that Democrats are saying against our nominee, who will be Joe Biden. And I think the best thing for us to do is to come together and start figuring out how we can make big things happen in a short period of time.
Coming to us from the great city of Kansas City, Missouri, Congressman Emanuel Cleaver. Thank you very much, sir.
Good to be with you.